What's up, Crossroads? Oh gosh, today is a difficult day for many of you, and for many people who've just been in this area for a while. Today's the day MsLori peoples will be laid to rest, as it's said. I had shared on some social media earlier this morning. I don't have one picture of she and I together, but I've known her for probably 35 years or better. When we were children, we used to go to the same summer camp, and obviously we were destined to be married because we already had the same last name, Lori Martin, and she was just one of those people that I truly enjoyed being around. We lived in two completely different worlds. I was from Jemison, she was from Clanton. That was, in my day, sworn enemies, worse than Alabama and Auburn ever imagined being. And it was just such a different time. Our worlds revolved around getting together and seeing each other. And when I say ours, not mine and Lori's, but teenagers in general. And because there was absolutely zero to do in Jemison, everyone from Jemison would come to Clanton. And so I grew up knowing Lori through children's camps at Cook Springs. Probably one of the highlights of my life was being a part of that camp. And during that camp, you made friendships with your sworn enemies because it was kids from all over the county. And she and I were friends. We had, through the years, there's probably 25 or 30 of us that became very close just because we're all the same age group and we all hung out there at camp. We became teenagers and we ran in different circles. My circle was a Jemison circle, and of course she was a Clanton girl. But anytime we saw each other, there was always that time that we would just laugh and we would cut up and we'd hug on each other and aggravate each other. She was never one of those people that looked at me differently. And I don't know any way that I could explain it where you would get it. Or maybe some of you would. There are times where you just don't feel like you're accepted, like you belong. Maybe you've never experienced that, but I've experienced that a good bit in my life. But she was one of those people that it didn't matter who was around. She made me feel like I was important. I was special. And from the time we were children until the time we were adults, she's always been that person to me. And I watched her grow up. I watched her go off to college, and when we would have those chance encounters and we just kind of meet up, we would laugh and talk about growing up at camp, and that was kind of the thing that always drew us back together. The conversation would always sway back to a camp and different people that would be there at the camp, and have you heard from this person or that person? And it was just special. And I watched her grow up and go to college, and then I hear she's marrying a state trooper, and I was like, oh, okay. And she's going to be a school teacher, and then hey, she's pregnant with her first child, and Natalie was born. And I can remember seeing Natalie when she was this big. Natalie, I don't know if you'll ever see this video, but you were a precious baby, still a precious young lady now. And then there was Keelan, and Keelan, I never really got to know Keelan, but what I did know of him reminded me so much of her. There was just a smile, there was a laugh, there was a constant jabbing, and I was like, yeah, that's his mom right there. And she became a school teacher. I said that earlier, and to me, being here at West End, I've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of students that were taught by Lori. And I can remember when my son was in third grade, we walked into the school and we didn't know who his teacher was going to be. And as we were walking into the school, I hear her say, "Oh no, it's one of them Martins." And I turned and find her, and I was like, "Girl, I hope my son ain't in your class because I want him to get an education." And she was just, "Let me tell you something, boy." And we aggravated each other and hugged on each other. Well, he wasn't in her class. He was across the hall from her. And he would make comments. He said, man, you walk by that class and it ain't nothing but Alabama. It's like a cardboard cutout of Nick Saban. And he said, she's loud, man. She gets fired up. And I would just laugh, listen to him talk about what MsLori was. And then, I've watched kids that have grown up in her class. And I listened to Ian last night talk about, he was in the band at Auburn University, who is the anti-Alabama. That's, you're from the South. But she made it a point to go find him. She would walk into the band with her Crimson stuff on and say, come here, we got to get a picture. He said every time. And that was just a conversation I heard off to the side. She was one of those people that truly influenced others. And then 17 years ago, she was diagnosed with cancer. And I remember when it started. And as a 40-year-old person, I guess I was, 30-something-year-old person, just thinking, man, that's terrible. But she's stubborn, and she fought. And she survived. She made it. And I can remember seeing her going, baby, how you feel? She said, Kenny, I'm great. I'm great. That cancer's gone. It tried to kick my tail, and I kicked itself. And we would laugh, and I was just blown away by her. Then, of course, it comes back, and then her sister's diagnosed with cancer, and she lost her sister. And I remember talking to her after that, and just expressing my sorrow, my condolences to her, and just thinking, I'm so glad that's not going to happen to you. About 3 months ago, probably, Brother James had a message on a Sunday, and she sent me a message that Sunday night, and she said, hey, your pastor's message really, really touched me. And she was already at that place to where she wasn't able to go and do anything. The cancer was back, and it was just tearing her body apart. And she said, could you send me a copy of the paper that he was referencing, that he passed out to you all? And I said, can I just bring it to you? And she said, that'll be great. So I went down to Brother James' office, and I said, hey, Boogie, can you do something for me? He said, what do you need? And I said, I need you to go with me to Lori's house. He said, okay. And I told him what had happened, and about his message had really spoken to her, and she wanted a copy of that paper. And on the ride over there, I just shared with him a little bit of who she was to me. And we get to her house, and her mother and father were there. Jesse wasn't. Keelan was, I think he was at work. And Natalie was at school. She might have already been at work. She might have been out of school by then. She probably was. And we walked to the door, and Lori's mother opened the door, and we went in, and I looked at Mr. Bobby, and I said, what's going on, Martin? He said, hey, Martin. And we cut up for a second, and then I looked, and there's Lori just sitting there. And she looked fine. She looked great. And I went in, and I just looked at her and said, why are we even here? You look fine, baby. And she said, oh, Kenny. And she was weak. You could tell she was weak. And we cut up for a little bit, and then she talked about her journey. She talked about what she had been through. Brother James, moving into the community, of course, knew who she was, but I don't know that he understood the journey that she had been on. And, we can hear about someone's journey, but when you hear it from them, it means something different. And Brother James listened to her, and one of the things that she said is, this just isn't fair. And my first thought was, no, it's not fair. But it had nothing to do with her. She said, my mom and daddy shouldn't have to go through this again. And I looked over at Mr. Bobby, a man that I've known my whole life, and he's sitting there crying, and I'm sitting there crying. And it was just one of those moments where the reality of life hit, that sometimes our life just isn't what we planned. And Brother James continued to talk to her and give her words of encouragement. And he spoke about the impact she's made on people's lives. And anytime he would say something about what you've done, she would just kind of look just like, please, I'm just living life. there was not 1 ounce of her of check me out, look what I'm doing. She was just trying to live her life. And so we get to about an hour's time, and you can tell she's exhausted, and she's about to have to take some more of her medicine, which was put in a port that they had to inject. And she said, I'm going to have to take my medicine, and it wipes me out. And I said, baby, we're going to leave and let you rest. And I said, I love you. She said, I love you too. And I looked at her parents, said, I love y'all. They said the same. And Brother James looked at me and said, hey, since you have such a history with Lord, why don't you pray for us? And I've never once wanted to look at a pastor and go, I will not do what you've told me to do. But in that moment, that's my first thought. I can't pray right now. Because things were just too raw in the moment. And I took a deep breath. I grabbed her hand. I looked at her and said, baby, this sucks. And as soon as that came out of my mouth, I was like, that's probably not what my pastor was asking for. He probably wasn't looking for that. I looked over Mr. Bobby, and he just halfway grinned and just nodded his head. And I said, but I want you to hear it's okay. And I cried, I hugged her, kissed her on the hand, and just said, I'm praying for you. And I prayed my guts out. And I said, God, I'm reading your word of miracles. I see hopeless situations that are brought to full life because of what you can do. And God, I believe with all of my heart you can heal her. But God, if that's not your plan, that's okay too. Because I know she will be healed. It's a hard thing to pray. And I finished my prayer, and I got back to the office. Brother James and I came back, and I just sat in my office and stared at the wall. I looked at my wall of students, hundreds of students on my wall, pictures of students through the years, some of them that I've actually lost, and just thought about life, you know? And I get the word that she's getting bad and that there's not going to be much time left. And found out about Keelan being in the hospital, and just heartbroken over that situation. And then I went to a funeral Saturday, I guess it was. Yeah, it was Saturday, Mr. Randy Davis's funeral. And I went and spoke with his children. And, you know, like Joshua was part of our youth group. Bradley was part of our youth group. Mark was part of our youth group. Taylor was part of our youth group. Whitney, I've known her since she was a kid. And Brother James said, Lori passed away last night. And my heart just sank. I was like, gosh. And there's that human side of me that says, well, I knew it wouldn't be long. But then I thought back to and I prayed for a miracle and it didn't happen. But then there was this little flicker of peace that hit my soul. And it quickly grew into a flame because I came to realize that a miracle actually did happen. And I understand when people say they lost their battle with cancer. But I can't help but think she finally won. She finally won. Because cancer will never hurt her again. It's not going to slow her down anymore. It's not going to paralyze her family in fear every time the phone rings. It's not going to bring clouds of darkness every time she had to go to the doctor. What's the results going to be? She's healed. And what I go back to is she influenced people. One of the things that I pray that I'm able to do through what we do at Crossroads and what I do in life, I want to help people to be better people. And I believe that someone that becomes a follower of Christ makes them a better person. And having Jesus in their life makes them better at life. And Lori made people better. I listen to football players that I've worked with over the past couple of years, and I've listened to them talk about MsLori, MsLori, MsLori. Some of you as students talked about MsLori, and many of our adults here worked with her and have watched her grow up, and she genuinely influenced people. And I think the whole 17-year battle, it reminds me of Joseph, and that's one of my favorite passages, is the story of Joseph and the fact that he was sold into slavery, and how there had to be a part of him that thought, man, why is this happening to me? About he was put in prison, and I just think, in the nighttime as he tried to sleep, there had to be a part of him going, God, I'm serving you. Why is this happening? And he was elevated to a place of almost royalty, and then it was all snatched away from him again. And I just had to think, he had to think, why? But then we find out that this whole journey he was on was to help others. And it says that he saved a nation because of his interpretation of a dream, and telling the king that there would be a drought and you need to store grain and prepare for what's coming. His whole journey was to help others. And yes, our life is about us, but ultimately I believe our life is about helping others. Lori did that. And today, last night, thousands of people. Today, hundreds, if not thousands of people will be at the graveside. And to say goodbye. And yeah, we're saying goodbye. But it's not a goodbye forever. For those of us that are followers of Christ, for those of us that have a relationship with Jesus Christ, have surrendered our lives, I'll see you later. I'll see her later. So that's okay. Death is as much a part of life as birth. And today, I choose to celebrate her life. And again, I don't know that her family would ever see this. And I know you know this family, but you had a special girl. And she meant a lot to this boy. Crossroads, I love you. And I'm going to try not to do this anymore. But I just felt like I needed to throw up on you for a minute and just help you see that even in the worst situations, good things still happen. I love you. See you soon.